PodCastle, episode 818 for Tuesday the 19th of December 2023. The Christmas Mummy by Heather Shaw and Tim Pratt, read by Rish Outfield and produced by Priya Wood and Eric Valdes. Rated G. Good morning, good day, good afternoon and good evening, and welcome to PodCastle, the flying castle of fantasy fiction. I'm your host, Matt Dovey, and it's my pleasure to present for your enjoyment The Christmas Mummy by Tim Pratt and Heather Shaw, narrated by Rish Outfield. This story was first published in A Christmas Chapbook and is an incredibly important story in PodCastle history. When we first ran it as episode 136 back in 2010, it started off an almost unbroken tradition. With only one exception, we have run a story by Tim Pratt and Heather Shaw for every Christmas episode since. And in news to cheer your hearts, there'll be a new Christmas original from them next week. We're only able to maintain such long-standing traditions because, well, you lot have kept us running so long. We're drawing to the close of our 15th anniversary year now, and for the entirety of those 15 years we have been funded dang near entirely by our audience. Barring the odd sponsorship at the top of an episode for a couple of weeks at a time, and it's been a hot minute since we last had one of them, everything round here is, and always has been, paid for by donations from people who just like what we do and want us to keep doing it. Which is just mind-blowing, really, that a thing like this old flying castle can exist simply because people want it to. What could be more magical than that? The combined will of thousands of disparate folk ensuring the ongoing survival of something that doesn't need to exist, but, in their estimation, and ours, and hopefully yours, should exist, simply because it is a good thing that makes the world a little better. I've been talking these past few weeks about the first ever Escape Artists End of Year donation drive, which is coming to a close this week. We've no grand goals or aims for the drive this year. It's our first time out with such a committed push, so we're just seeing how it goes. Oh, I've got no great final exhortation for you here then. No stretch goals or big numbers. And I've covered enough about how the 501c3 non-profit status we finally got this year makes your donations go further than ever. All I really want to say then, in this final pitch, is thank you. Thank you for donating if you do, for spreading the word if you can't, for listening to us week in, week out, and seeing the value in what we do enough to keep us running for 15 years. If you haven't yet signed up to donate and want to, the best way is through Patreon at patreon.com/EAPodcasts. You can subscribe through PayPal too, or throw a one-off donation into the pot for the season of giving there or through Ko-fi. If you've got Amazon Prime, you can set up a free donation to us through Twitch with just a little bit of admin. Honestly, there's about a half dozen ways to get money to us if you're so inclined, and all the possible details are on escapeartist.net under the supporters menu. Thank you for listening to me go on about all this these past few weeks, and thank you especially to everyone who's signed up as a result. Tim Pratt is the author of over 30 novels, most recently Multiverse Adventures Doors of Sleep and Prison of Sleep. He's a Hugo Award winner for short fiction and has been a finalist for Nebula, World Fantasy, Sturgeon, Philip K. Dick, Mythopoeic, Stoker and other awards. He's also a senior editor and occasional book reviewer for Locus magazine. He tweets incessantly at Tim Pratt and publishes a new story every month for patrons at patreon.com/Tim Pratt. Heather Shaw is a writer, editor, UX designer, sewist and Lindy hopper living in Berkeley, California with her husband and their 15-year-old son, River. She's had short fiction published in Strange Horizons, The Year's Best Fantasy, Escape Pod, PodCastle and other nice places. She has been the fiction editor at the erotica zine Fishnet, the speculative fiction zine Flytrap and the pro-SF zine Persistent Visions. As a family project during lockdown, Heather, Tim and their son River designed, created and successfully kickstarted a tabletop card game called Cyberwreck. You can find out more about Heather at her website uxbyheather.com. Rish Outfield is a writer, voice actor and audiobook narrator. He got his start co-hosting the June Steve audio fiction magazine and That Gets My Goat podcast, where he and Big Anklevich attempt to waste time entertainingly. He also features his own stories on the Rish Outcast podcast. And now pay attention, for our tale is about to begin, and you've not heard it for a long time.
The Christmas Mummy by Heather Shaw and Tim Pratt. Nate shook Trish awake, and she rolled over to squint at her brother, who was illuminated only by the babyish nightlight he couldn't sleep without. "Is it morning already?" she asked. The window was still dark, and her parents had sworn they wouldn't open any presents before first light, never mind Trish's well-reasoned argument that it was technically Christmas as soon as the clock struck midnight. "No, but I hear Santa," Nate said. At age 8, 2 years older than her brother, Trish was beginning to have her doubts about Santa. But hope sprang eternal, so she got out of bed, though she grumbled that it was probably just Uncle Ray arriving late for the holidays as usual. That was her dad's grumble, really. Trish loved her uncle, who brought wonderful presents, scary masks, weird statues, musical instruments she'd never even heard of, from his travels around the world. Trish led Nate from the room, into the hall, their parents' door was closed, and onto the stairs. She could hear someone moving down there. Trish crept down the carpeted steps. The only light in the living room came from the bright Christmas tree. Even the Yule log in the fireplace had burned down. 2 men, dressed in black pajamas with their faces covered, were tying a big red ribbon around a crate that was bigger than the couch. "Ninjas?" Trish whispered to her brother. "Christmas ninjas," Nate said. One of the ninjas pulled up his mask a little and ate one of the cookies they'd left for Santa. He drank the milk, too, leaving a white mustache on his ninja mask when he pulled it back down over his mouth. Trish went to the bottom of the stairs. "Hey," she said. The ninjas froze. "You're just having a dream," the one with the milk mustache said. Trish reached over and pinched Nate, who yelped. "No, we're not," she said. "Right, you caught us. We're elves," the other ninja said. Trish crossed her arms. "You look like ninjas." "They're ninja elves," Nate said like she was an idiot. "Exactly," said the one with the mustache. "Now go to sleep or Santa will be, upset. You don't want to see him when he gets upset." The ninjas raced to the fireplace almost quicker than Trish's eyes could follow, then scurried up the chimney and out of sight. Trish went over to the wooden crate, so big it came almost to her chin, and so long it barely fit in the room, crowding the other presents out of the way. "Who's it for?" Nate said. "Is it for me?" "It says, for the Patchett family. Doesn't say who it's from." "From Santa, obviously," Nate yawned. "I'm going back to sleep, so it'll be morning sooner." Trish could see the sense in that. At 6 a.m. sharp, Nate and Trish woke their parents. The ninja elves seemed almost a dream, but when the 4 of them stood in the living room, the huge box was still there, tied with a big red bow. "See, Mom, I told you Santa's ninja elves left that last night. They ate the cookies and everything," Nate said. "I need coffee before I can process this." Their father turned toward the kitchen. "Right," their mother said. "I'll call Uncle Ray. I'll bet he's behind this, and he should be here by now anyway." Trish groaned. They couldn't open presents unless the whole family was here. Uncle Ray arrived an hour later, laden down with oddly shaped gifts, wrapped in newspapers printed in foreign languages and tied with twine as usual. He stood in front of the giant box and shook his head. "No, it's not from me. Ninjas brought it, you say?" "Ninja elves," Nate corrected. Uncle Ray nodded. "It must be from my nemesis, that blackguard Hitler Moriarty. You should leave the room while I open it, in case it's booby-trapped." "Did you say Hitler Moriarty?" Mom asked. "Well, that's what we call him, in the treasure-hunting, antiquity-acquiring business," their uncle admitted. "No one knows his real name." The kids watched from the hallway as he untied the bow and pried open the lid with a crowbar. Gold glinted within. "Is it treasure?" Nate asked. "No," Trish said. "Why would Uncle Ray's enemy send him treasure?" "Maybe it's cursed treasure." "Good point," Trish said. It's not treasure, their uncle called. It's a sarcophagus. A what? Dad asked. Like a big coffin, Trish said. For mummies. My class saw one at the field museum on our last field trip. I know what a sarcophagus is, Dad said. Then why did you ask? Trish said. The lid of the sarcophagus creaked open. A smell like Mom's awful Christmas potpourri emerged, along with horrible moaning. Bandaged fingers gripped the edge of the coffin, and a child-sized mummy sat up. It's a mummy, Mom yelled. Cool, Nate shouted. It's not cool. Uncle Ray backed almost into the kitchen. It's an assassin. Uncle Ray, Trish said, why would Moriarty send ninjas to deliver a mummy to kill you? Well, why not just have the ninjas kill you? Besides, it was addressed to the whole family, so he must be for all of us. Killing me with ninjas would be too easy, Ray insisted. A mummy is just his style, and so is killing my whole family. I told you, he's a villain. The mummy climbed out of the sarcophagus, tattered cloth bindings hanging from his arms. He bent down and started petting their cat, Mr. Paws, who had been sleeping under the tree on top of some presents. Mr. Paws, who was actually a girl, purred contentedly. Why are you all scared? Nate said. It's a Christmas mummy. It's a fiendish thing from beyond the grave. Uncle Ray chewed on his mustache. Oh, there's not enough coffee in the world, Dad grumbled. It's just like the magic snowman in that cartoon, Nate said. Or like that movie where the kid finds a flying reindeer in the woods. Or the one about the abdominal snow monster that everybody throws rocks at, but he's really nice. Nate went into the living room to pet Mr. Paws. The mummy cocked his bandaged head at Nate, then turned his attention back to the cat. You're not here to kill us, are you? Nate asked the mummy. The mummy said something, but it wasn't English. See, Nate said, he's here to teach us the true meaning of Christmas. What did that mummy say? Mom asked. My ancient Egyptian is rusty, but I think he said the afterlife is not what he expected, Ray said, and that he likes cats. I'm going to Irish up this coffee, Dad said, and disappeared into the kitchen. Ray, you're my brother, and I love you, but, Mom began. Trish shook her head. Her mom always said that during the holidays. I'll get to the bottom of this, Ray said. I'll track Moriarty down. He must be behind this. What do we do with the mummy? Trish said. Uncle Ray said, let it do whatever it wants. Mummies can be dangerous, with the curses and so on. Merry Christmas, Mom muttered. He thinks he's in the afterlife, and you're his slaves, so just do his bidding, and you'll be fine. Ray put on his coat and scarf and battered old hat. But we can't understand what it wants, Trish said. He wants to open presents with us, Nate said, sitting beside the mummy. Mr. Paws was batting at the loose bandages dangling from the mummy's wrists. Fine then, Ray said. I'll be back soon. Kids, don't touch that mummy. You might catch something, Mom said, but her heart wasn't in it. She never could get really mad until she'd had at least 2 cups of coffee anyway. So you were just a kid when you got mummified? Trish said. I'm sorry. The mummy moaned, but didn't sound particularly distressed. He picked up a bright package and shook it beside his ear. That's mine! Nate snatched the present away, handing the mummy a different one. Open this instead. Before Trish could object, the mummy tore open the paper, revealing a doll wearing an elaborate ball gown. The mummy made an interrogative sound, and Nate said, It's just girl stuff. The mummy offered the doll to Trish, who managed to say thank you. Mom and Dad came in, not quite arguing, but not full of Christmas cheer. Dad said, It's just worse than the time he gave us that antique treasure map, and all those conquistadors showed up here looking for the lost city of opium. Mom said, You can't blame Ray for this. Somebody else sent the mummy. Whatever, Dad said. Trish, start handing out the presents. Let the mummy open all your uncle's gifts. It's only fair. Everyone got something they really wanted. Nate's favorite was a handheld cannon that shot foam rubber balls, which filled Trish with a nameless dread. And Trish was happiest with a book of 101 Magic Tricks You Can Do, which she began reading right away. The mummy enjoyed the various novelty neckties they'd gotten for Uncle Ray. He wore them when teaching archaeology classes at the university, and put several of them around his neck at once, including the one that lit up, which Trish had picked out. There was a knock at the door. Nate raced to answer it, just like he always rushed to answer the phone now, which annoyed Trish, because that used to be her job. The door opened to reveal a hunched, bald man, dressed in an old-fashioned black coat, holding a cane topped with a silver bird's head. "Hello, Patchett family," he intoned. "I am Dr. Attila von Lecter." He paused, then frowned when they just stared. "Perhaps you know me as Dr. Iago Dracula." Still no reply. He tapped his cane impatiently.
"Dr. Hitler Moriarty?"
Trish suggested. He squinted at her. "Oh, of course, that one. Yes, tremble, Patchett family, and await your doom as I speak the sacred words of resurrection and wake this mummy to—"
"This mummy?"
Trish pointed. Moriarty hobbled into the room and stared at the mummy, who was playing with one of Nate's toy fire engines. "Oh, cranberries," Moriarty said. Mom said, "Ray is out looking for you. I'm sure he'll be back soon. Can I take your coat, Mr. Moriarty?" "Dr. Moriarty," he grumbled, but he gave up his coat, hobbled into the living room, and perched on the couch. "I wonder what woke it up," Moriarty said. "Usually the ravenous dead don't awake without my help." Nate looked up, grinning.
"Christmas spirit woke him up."
The mummy nodded, though Trish was pretty sure it didn't understand what he'd said.
"He's here to teach us the true meaning of Christmas,"
Nate said.
"Aren't you?"
"The true meaning of Christmas," Moriarty said. "You mean the Christian appropriation of a pagan solstice festival of life, death, and rebirth?" Nate stared at him.
"No,"
he said.
"I mean being nice and loving each other and presents and candy canes and stuff."
"Bah!" Dr. Moriarty shook his head. "I knew a child mummy was a mistake. They're never vicious enough. But it was all they had in stock so close to the holidays." He looked very glum. Mom handed him a glass, and he sniffed it suspiciously. "Eggnog," she explained, handing the kids their glasses. He made a face. "I hate to be a bother, but do you have anything stronger?" "One Irish coffee coming up," Dad said. "Mostly Irish." He went back to the kitchen with his own empty cup. "So, Dr. Moriarty," Mom asked, "if you don't mind me asking, why are you trying to, doom us?" "Your brother Ray has plagued me for years. He infiltrated my organization, stole secrets beyond his understanding, and used those ill-gotten gains to—" He grimaced, and his voice grew thick with distaste. "To get tenure. He's stolen the fame that rightly belongs to me." "Oh, thank you," he said, accepting the Irish coffee from Dad, who nodded and raised his glass in salute. Where was I?" Moriarty said, staring at the mummy who was playing Nate's new video game.
"You were telling us how Uncle Ray is smarter than you and it drives you crazy,"
Trish said, admiring the new necklace Uncle Ray had given her in the mirror. "What is that you're wearing?" Dr. Moriarty cried. Trish held up the jade necklace.
"Uncle Ray got it for me."
"This is my point." Dr. Moriarty stood up shakily. "He gives a girl of 7 the jade necklace of Sumaria."
"I'm 8,
Trish said. Uncle Ray stormed through the front door, dragging a struggling ninja by the neck. Trish could tell it was the one from the night before because he still had a faded white milk mustache on his mask. "That miscreant Moriarty eludes me, but I found one of his associates, and with a little persuasion—"
"He's right here."
Trish pointed.
"And shut the door. You're letting the cold in."
"Oh." Ray kicked the door shut behind him without looking. It was a nice move, and Nate clapped. After a moment, the mummy did too. Dr. Moriarty put down the coffee cup with as much dignity as he could muster. "Ray Caruso." "That's Dr. Raymond Anthony Caruso to you, Hitler." Dr. Moriarty winced. "I really wish you'd use one of the other names," he said. "I was very drunk when I came up with that one." Ray hurled the ninja at Dr. Moriarty, and the two crashed together and collapsed in a tangle of limbs. "Hey, he's an old man," Dad said. "Don't shove him. What if he breaks a hip or something?" "Don't worry about him," Ray said. "He drank the elixir of life, stolen from the hands of the princess he doomed to a lingering death. and now he will suffer the same fate.
You are not killing somebody in my living room on Christmas, Mom said, especially not lingeringly. This is a day of giving and forgiveness. Don't fight,
Nate yelled, putting his hands over his ears and squinching up his eyes. He started it. Dr. Moriarty pushed the ninja off him and sat up. Soon everyone was yelling, even Dad and the ninja, and the mummy was moaning and Nate was throwing a tantrum. Trish sighed and picked up the book of magic tricks. The necklace she was wearing began to tingle, and she glanced into the mirror to see a strange green light emanating from the jewelry. The book twisted and wriggled in her hand, and when she looked down, it was different, older, bigger, dustier, with the title written in gold leaf instead of black ink. The book glowed with the same green luminescence as the necklace. She opened to the table of contents, saw something promising, flipped to the appropriate page, and began to chant aloud. After a moment, everyone stopped yelling, except the mummy, and stared at her. Trish noticed that she was levitating a little, just a couple of inches, but she kept chanting. The mummy's moans turned into words in English. You're worse than the bickering priests. What is this nest of adders? I thought this was a feast day. The afterlife is so noisy. It speaks English, Ray said.
I found a spell in here.
Trish was no longer glowing or levitating.
The gift of tongues, see?
How? Ray said, dumbstruck. The necklace, Moriarty said. It's an alchemist's tool for changing base things to their perfected forms, which you would know if you spent more time studying and less time infiltrating shadowy cabals of treasure seekers.
Your words make sense now, but the sentences do not, the mummy complained.
Honey, Ray said, Uncle Ray's going to need that necklace back.
Nope, Trish said. Not until you all learn the true meaning of Christmas.
Moriarty sighed. I told you, it's the Christian appropriation of
the other true meaning of Christmas, Trish said. The one Nate was talking about.
She went to the mummy.
Do you like being a mummy? She said. I can curse people, he said. But otherwise, no, it isn't much fun. These bandages are itchy. Okay then, Trish said. The necklace began to glow again, and she opened the magic book, finding another spell. Once more, she levitated.
Trish, darling, her uncle said, but Moriarty shushed him.
She seems a sensible girl, he said. It must not run in the family. Leave her be.
The mummy began to glow green, and Trish reached out to unwrap his bandages.
I want to open the present too,
Nate yelled, and began tugging off the bandages and tossing them on the floor, where the cat rolled among the strips of cloth in rapturous joy. Their unwrapping revealed a little boy, dark of hair and eye, dressed only in a loincloth. He held up his hands in wonderment. I am restored to life, he shouted. He threw his arms around Trish and hugged her as she stopped levitating and sank to the floor.
You can come live with me, Dr. Moriarty said, and tell me all about your civilization.
No, you can come with me, Ray said, and eat all the ice cream and cake you want. And then you can tell me all about your civilization.
Ninja, seize the boy,
Moriarty shouted. But at some point, the ninja had vanished, probably back up the chimney, or possibly to the bathroom. Moriarty slumped, but then began yelling at Ray, who yelled back.
Quiet, Trish shouted, or I'll use this magical necklace to turn you into a responsible adult with a normal job, Uncle Ray. And I'll use it to make you stop using such stupid names and quit hiring ninjas, Dr. Moriarty.
The two men of science and intrigue looked at one another, then at Trish.
What do you want, dear?
Dr. Moriarty said.
You both know a lot about mummies and stuff, Trish said. Why don't you talk to the mummy, I mean this little boy, together instead of fighting all the time?
She scowled.
I mean, it's Christmas. Don't make me hurt somebody.
Moriarty tapped his cane.
Your uncle's name is well known, so his involvement might open certain doors that are usually closed to me, barring lockpicks or explosives.
And you do have a lot of forbidden knowledge in that bald head of yours, Ray said.
Now shake hands, Trish said, or I'll try this spell about turning people into apples.
She squinted.
Wait, I mean asps, whatever those are.
Is there a spell for making Daddy's headache go away? Her dad asked hopefully. Moriarty and Uncle Ray shook hands, though neither looked happy about it.
There,
Trish thought.
peace on Earth. Or at least peace in the living room. For one day.
But one day was a start.
I was promised cake,
The mummy said,
and Nate began to clap his hands and shout, Cake! Cake! Cake!
Mom stood up.
I can manage cold pound cake with whipped cream.
They all went to the dining room. Dad brought in folding chairs. They sat down and everyone joined hands and said grace together, though Dr. Moriarty prayed to something called the strong anthropic principle. The former mummy invoked the names of a number of Egyptian deities, and Nate sincerely thanked the ninja elves for their bounty. They ate the cake in silence. Then the former mummy said,
This is a very strange and delicious afterlife.
Hear, hear,
Dr. Moriarty replied.
Ra bless us, everyone,
Trish said, and everyone laughed, except for the mummy, and Nate, who just looked confused, and the ninja, who must have sneaked back in at some point and now sat in the corner eating cake. But ninjas hardly ever laughed at anything, no matter how funny it was. So that was all right.
And welcome back. That was The Christmas Mummy by Heather Shaw and Tim Pratt. And if you enjoyed that, check out all the other Christmas stories we've run down the years. The easiest way to find them is to go to our website, podcastle.org, and click on Heather or Tim's name on this story's post, and then you'll find them all listed under authored episodes. And, of course, make sure you're back round here next week for the debut of their newest Christmas original, Skipping Christmas. Next week's will be the last story of the year from us, in fact, so I'm feeling in a contemplative mood here. 2023 has been a tough old year for us on these castle ramparts. Rolling disaster does not even begin to cover our personal lives these last few months, and it is frankly a miracle that there has been a new episode out on time every week. The ideal is that we have episodes produced and queued up around 4 weeks in advance, but there's been times this year where we've still been discussing on Saturday what we're putting out on Tuesday. The only small mercy has been that our disasters have not quite overlapped, and we've been able to pick up the slack for each other when we could, and trust that the others will do the same for us in turn when needed. So here, at the end of the year, I want to say thank you to Eleanor, Shingai, Sophie, Caitlin, Devin and Eric for keeping the castle in the air, somehow, some way. I've honestly no idea how we did it except that we did it together. And thank you to Andrew, Craig, Amalia, Julia, Kieran, Ryan, Sarah, Shree, Tava, Tierney and Zeev for bravely sallying forth onto the fields of slush to find the stories that underpin the whole thing, because none of this could have happened anyway without the hours of work you put in reading and considering and discussing, making sure we're the very best we can be. But, as tough a year as it's been, it's also been celebratory. It was our 15th birthday. 15 years! On the internet! And it has been a deep and delightful privilege to do all the interviews these past few months. I was a fan of PodCastle before I was ever staff on PodCastle, so getting to talk to such incredible folks who, to a person, are smart, gregarious, generous, insightful and welcoming, and some of whom wouldn't have known me from Adam before we reached out to them about coming back to help us celebrate. Well, it's been a joy, and I suspect that's come through in my endless fangirling in the interviews. Thank you, then, to Rachel, Anne, Dave, Anna, Priya, Graham, Rachel, Jen, Khalida, Sheree, Summer and Peter for taking the time out to come back and talk shop with us. It wasn't always easy organising these talks across time zones, and it probably wasn't always easy dredging your memories for some of the things I was asking about. But I loved every minute of talking with you all. Thank you, as always, to all our authors and narrators, because you trust us with your work, and you do such excellent work, and we are humbled that you give us that chance to shepherd your stories into the world. I've choked up more than once recording my host spots this year, so, sincerely, thank you for that. And lastly, of course, thank you to all of you for listening, both to the stories and to my rambling. I've been half joking with my new therapist of late that she could probably get a full understanding of my psyche by listening to some of these outros. But you've not only suffered my nonsense, but even, God's help you, encouraged it. Whether you're one of the folks I chat with on the EA Discord, or someone who's reached out via Twitter or Blue Sky, whether you've submitted a favourite story from the archives as part of our outros this year, or just shown up every week to hear one story told well, thank you for being there. This year's been a heck of a struggle for some of us in the castle, but the castle has been a beacon, a reason to keep going, a thing that is unequivocally good and positive in our lives, and it really is a privilege to do the work for you. We'll be back next week with our Christmas story, and back in the new year after that. None of us are going anywhere just yet, and let us all hope it's a better one than these past few we've been having. Be kind to yourselves in these weeks of rest and respite. As part of our 15th anniversary celebrations, we've been asking you to send in your favourite stories from our archive. This week we have a couple of recommendations. Andrew LH is recommending episode 431, La Heron by Charlotte Ashley, saying, 2 dynamic, unusual female leads in an entertaining and adventurous plot, well written action scenes and well read. And an anonymous commenter submits episode 292, Scry by Anne Ivy. I love that the characters are complex. The world building is also on point, with just enough detail to drag you into the politics without bogging you down too much. Thank you both for the suggestions. That was our show for this week. On behalf of everyone at PodCastle, your co-editors Shingai Enjorikagunda and Eleanor R. Wood, assistant editor Caitlin Zavanovich, audio engineers Devin Martin and Eric Valdes, and our many wonderful first readers, Andrew Cahoe, Craig Jackson, Amalia Harrington, Julia Patt, Kieran Corsini, Ryan Cole, Sarah S. Messenger, Sophie Barker, Shrikripa Krishna Prasad, Tava Nova, Tierney Bailey, Zeev Witties, and myself, Matt Dovey. Thank you for letting us share another story with you. The legal bit. PodCastle is part of the Escape Artists Foundation, a 501c3 non-profit, and this episode is distributed under the Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 international license. That means you can share it, and please do, but you cannot sell it and you cannot change it. If you want specifics, check creativecommons.org. Our music is by Shiva in Exile. Everything we do on PodCastle is 100% donor funded, and if you'd like to support what we and the rest of EA do, please join us on our Patreon at patreon.com/EApodcasts. Prefer another method? There's details for supporting us via Twitch, Amazon Prime, Ko-fi and PayPal on escapeartist.net. We'll be back next Tuesday with another fantastic tale. In the meantime, you might care to check out our sister podcasts, Escape Pod for science fiction, Pseudopod for horror, Cast of Wonders for YA speculative fiction, and Catscast for speculative cat stories. If your heart belongs to us though, we'll see you next week. Be safe and be kind.